All right, Bulls and Bears, hope you're doing good. Back here with another report, another dose of economic reality. We have to start more frequent updates here because the you know what's starting to hit the fan. The markets, big sell off today. I'm recording this on August 5th. Typically, what we see before major economic downturns like the one we've been forecasting here for a long time, but we didn't just say it for the last 5 years that at some point that would happen. We said this specifically the second half of 2024. Here we are into the second month of the second half. We're in August now, with July being the first month out of the way. It's actually happening even quicker than I thought. I was thinking September, October. Let's talk about what happened today. Huge sell off. What does this mean? Big money is selling. The State Streets, the Vanguards, the Fidelities, these mega companies that own most of the stock market are selling off. They're panicking. They see something on the horizon. And we've been telling you here that the economy doesn't have much longer because the consumer-driven economy, with consumers in so much debt right now, and many of them approaching their credit limits and their credit ceilings on their credit cards, delinquencies starting to increase, credit card delinquencies, car loans, huge jump, even foreclosures starting to increase. This is where it hits the road, folks. And sure, they can pump the markets back up, but eventually you run out of buyers. And sure, they can come in with the Fed can come in and rescue this with a plunge protection, but ultimately there's not going to be a buyer for this. I mean, could they come in and could they just pump in a bunch of money out of nowhere, create it out of thin air? Of course, right? Especially during an election year. But what I've been saying here, especially with the stocks that we've been investing in, oh, by the way, NVIDIA, for those of you that followed me on that, huge drop today. We called the peak on that, the only channel here to do that. What was the other one? Rivian. Nice little drop today. We've been betting against both of those stocks. They both saw pretty big run-ups, especially NVIDIA. So we're doing really good on those trades. But the Magnificent Seven stocks shed $1 trillion, trillion with a T. Those include Apple and NVIDIA. We know that Berkshire Hathaway went to a record cash position right before this market turmoil that we saw today. And, we'll have to see how this plays out here. But, anyone that's surprised or shocked at this, and the news, the media, the business news channels that I watch, they're acting surprised. Well, the economy was strong. Jerome Powell just said last month, he said this, he said that about jobs. He said consumer was strong. They're acting shocked. And these are business channels that are supposed to be, on top of this thing here. We also had a couple platforms that had outages today, Schwab and Fidelity. They had temporary disruptions. Right? You can bet the big money, they still had access to their trades. But a lot of people were locked out of their accounts today or couldn't trade. Charles Schwab and Fidelity Investments had resolved technical issues with their apps and online brokerages. On a day, users rushed to trade as markets slumped on rising fears of a U.S. recession. Folks, this is why it pays to be ahead of the game. You don't want to be rushing to sell. And watch, they'll pump it back up tomorrow. Probably not as high as it was before, but they'll pump it back up to get people to remain calm. And then you can bet the big money is going to resume selling as we go into the fall here, the remainder of the summer. But is there 1 month left? To see, June was the first day of summer, July. So we're about halfway through the summer right now. But as fall approaches, this is when you see markets really start to face the music. And this year is going to be a telltale sign of what's going to happen here. So, folks, look at this. We got oil at $74. Silver dropped to $27.34. I think this is going to be a dip buying opportunity for silver. Got the 10-year bond being suppressed right now down to 3.78. And look at some of the headlines out today, folks. This is wild just to read this here. Look at this right here. This is how it was reported out of Money Watch. Reasons why the market is melting down. One of the reasons here, one of the big four reasons. The Fed might have waited too long to cut interest rates. Are you kidding me? Are you joking? With the cost of living and prices where they're at right now, cutting interest rates. Now they're saying they waited too long. Even a rate cut this fall is too soon. They need to hike rates. They need to keep rates elevated because the bubbles need to go burst. The markets need to correct. The cost of living doesn't need to go up but just more slowly. It needs to come down. We need negative inflation, also known as deflation, right? Of course, they don't want that because that's going to unveil that there really is no economic growth. All the economic growth we've seen is just debt-based spending, borrowing and spending, and then pretending the economy is good. How long have we been saying that here? It's just interesting to see things finally reach this point. But let's go on to some other news here. Look what's happening in Tijuana. Prices for goods and services in Tijuana, Mexico, up 8% just in recent weeks. Produce, goods, and services, as well as the cost of gasoline, have gone up by as much as 8% in recent weeks. Are they starting to see the beginnings of hyperinflation there in Tijuana? Now, typically, border towns are worse because you have a lot of people coming in from the United States and buying up a lot of stuff. So it's typically more expensive in those towns because of the tourism. But interesting, 8% in a week. That's something to keep an eye on there. Let's talk about this. 3 U.S. cities where median home prices actually fell the most. And we're starting to see more cities now go into negative territory. Now, this is not year over year, but this is 1 month over the other. So the median list price overall, this is not just select cities, this is overall, dropped from June to July from 445,000 to 439,950. And that's according to Realtor.com. So we're starting to see even the housing market now decline, and it's usually going up in the summer, right? From month to month, it's usually going up, and usually we don't start seeing month-over-month declines until September, October, November, December. So it's pretty interesting here. Let's bring up a chart here out of Realtor.com, and if you look at 2024, which is the dark, maroon-looking color right here. So if you look at this, we were up year over year compared to 2023 and 2022, but look at this. Now, we're going to see where the rubber hits the road here coming up, and maybe some year-over-year declines coming up later this year. Very interesting. And this is on top of, or this is at the same time as all these programs are put out there to keep the markets propped up. And let me just list a couple of them right now. We've got the government buying most mortgages right now that are being issued from non-bank lenders. Those are government backed. The government comes in and buys those. And the non-bank lenders, they can loan out money without having to worry about people paying it back because the government that has unlimited debt capabilities comes in and buy these loans. Even with that, markets aren't going up like they were. The housing market is starting to stall, not just starting to stall. Well, it depends on what you look at. If you talk about sales, sales has been falling off the cliff now for over a year. Prices, though, that's been the thing that's been very slow to react in the housing market. All the down payment assistance programs, all 50 states, we have a lot of different down payment assistance programs right now. So even with all this, we've got the markets stalling, the housing market stalling. And a lot of homeowners are starting to get desperate right now and are starting to slash prices. And as we go into the fall, you're going to see more desperate homeowners panic and put their homes on the market. More layoffs announced. NVIDIA, or actually no, Intel slashing 15% of its workforce. Dell laying off thousands of workers in sales reorganization. Dell Technologies is laying off an unspecified number of employees in a reorganization of sales and marketing teams. We're seeing a lot of companies do this, a lot of jobs being lost. And that's why we keep a close eye on the jobs number, which was a disaster. But just last week, we reported how bad of a number it was, 114,000 jobs added for the entire month, when we see new unemployment filings in the 800,000 for the month. Right, so this was easy to see coming if you just look between, read between the lines, if you look at the raw data, instead of just all these feel-good quotes put out there by the Fed. Speaking of the Fed, the U.S. Fed under pressure to cut rates now, especially with market turmoil. So will this be the reason that they come in and cut rates, right? We know that they were reluctant because of the cost of living. They didn't want it to go even higher, right? They don't want markets to crash, but they don't want prices for consumers to go higher because consumers are, again, approaching the financial cliff. A cost of living crisis here. Personal insolvencies rise. 4-year high in Canada, a country where the home prices are even further detached from wages, even worse than the U.S. Cost of living crisis. 4-year high on personal insolvencies in Canada. Folks, this is global. Look at this. Sports betting linked to rise in bankruptcies and lower credit scores. Do you think they're trying to blame this on sports betting? Right? Do you think you're going to see just the few people that do sports betting, that particular group, you think that's going to cause an overall rise in bankruptcies? No, I think they're using this as an excuse. The rise in bankruptcies is because the cost of living is too high, inflation's been too high, people aren't making enough money. Now, the question remains, what will the powers that be, will the central planners, the bankers, what will they do to prevent a market correction? Will they put another freeze on foreclosures like we did in 2020? Well, we don't have the sickness out there as the excuse, right? So we just have natural market forces now with the debt levels right now. Consumers are close to being tapped out. So, or will they invent something to blame it on? Will there be a war, a contrived war that they just start to cover all this up? Look at this here. We talk a lot about companies coming in and buying up housing. San Diego's naturally occurring affordable housing see rents soar by 80% in 3 years. And when you get into the article, take a look at this. Private equity stakeholders, and this particular report focuses on Blackstone, which acquired nearly 6,000 rental units just in 2021 alone, just in San Diego. When you add up all the different cities across the U.S., they're buying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of properties here. The report reveals that Blackstone increased rents for San Diego units by an average of 38% since its acquisition. The rise has nearly doubled the 20% median price increases for the county. Folks, do you think this is a level playing field? Do you think this is fair to have these mega companies out there with access to the Fed window, with access to billions of dollars in liquidity at rock bottom rates? They could just come in and raise the rents, and what are people going to do? People are going to have to pay the higher rent, and they'll get roommates, and they'll scrape up, and they'll work second jobs to pay their rent. This is the roof over their head, folks. This is just one of the reasons why we see homelessness spiking and rents increasing. Folks, we have to do something. This could be changed at the stroke of a pen. They could just pass a law that says these companies with so many billions of dollars in equity can't buy property. Now, I don't mind a small fry investor with 2, 3, 4 properties buying homes. Some homes need to be investor owned. Not everyone is cut out to be a homeowner, right? But when you have hundreds of thousands of homes being bought up by just a few companies, folks, that's a recipe for disaster, and it's one of the ingredients to a cost of living nightmare. So how can we benefit from this, folks? Let's talk about the trades here that we've been in here. We've been betting on a couple stocks going down. One of them was Rivian. The other one was NVIDIA. And we called the top of NVIDIA, but a few weeks ago, and let's just bring up a chart here. It's at $102 now. We called it just about at the peak, right? We saw it peak right there at about 135. I bought it on the downside, I believe about 126 we got in. It did a double top, and look at this. At the close today, we were down to 102, folks. We're up big on that trade. That was NVIDIA. Rivian, we're up big on that trade, folks. So this is what it's all about. If you know how to read these markets, how to read the economy, you know exactly when to get in, how to benefit from this, right? And I know most of you aren't traders, but just to show you that there are ways to make money from this, right? Not that I'm getting rich, because I'm fearful of the entire system going down, all the platforms going down, a blackout, a hack of the entire grid. Look what we had a couple weeks ago. We had the flash internet outage, right? Globally. Prepare for something big, because they need to cover this mess up, this financial situation. They need to cover it up. War, an outage, a hack. Pick your poison, folks, but be ready, be prepared. Have some money out of the system, cash in hand. Food, water, emergency essentials, set aside, because it could get nasty later this year, folks. It's already starting to get nasty. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Keep an eye on it. Make sure you subscribe. Come back for more updates. And we'll talk to you very soon. Keep stacking, everybody. Bye for now.